Ladies and gentlemen of the Projectbodybuilding.com audio and visual radiance, I'm Skip. Welcome to episode 4 of my Q&A. I want to touch real quick on some questions that I received over the last week that are gear related, ancillary related, that sort of thing. I'm not going to answer those questions in this Q&A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Q&A in the not too distant future. Hopefully, maybe even just the next one that I do will be just gear related. I want to give myself a little bit of time, a couple weeks before I do that, so that I can kind of advertise that I'm doing it, so that I can get a bunch of questions, and I won't hold too much back. I think when Q&As are done that are related to gear questions, people tend to kind of hold back. They're kind of vague, that sort of thing. I'll be pretty detailed. So if you want to get questions in over the next couple weeks, we'll make sure to post on Projectbodybuilding.com a thread so that you can ask questions, and I'll take those questions from there. I'll probably post on Intense Muscle as well, and maybe even Professional Muscle, so that I get quite an array of questions. So if you did ask a gear question in the thread for this Q&A, I'm setting it aside. Not forgetting about it. I'll come back to it, but not in this Q&A. So I'm going to skip over it in this Q&A. Because it's about 3 a.m. I'm pretty tired, so I'm going to get right to it. First question. When dieting athletes for shows, if they stall on fat loss progress, what do you use as a gauge to whether their skip load was too long or whether their daily macros during the week need changing? How do you know which to change? Black and white question with a very gray answer. Tons of variables. So it's a difficult question to answer, but for the most part, if you baseline at some point during the week after the load, but you don't drop below that baseline, then it's a pretty good indication, not always, because like I say, there's a lot of variables, but it's a pretty good indication that the macros for your daily diet need to be looked at. They may need to be changed. If you baseline late in the week, or obviously not at all, then of course that's a skip load issue. That one's a little more cut and dry. But again, there's a ton of variables, so it's a difficult question to answer. It comes down to that individual. Second question, how do you and Dante Trudell know each other? Seems like an odd meeting of the minds going back to the mid-2000s. I'm trying to think how long I have known him. I'm thinking, let's see, off the top of my head, it would have to be about 2003, 2002 maybe. The short answer, which is probably still kind of long, but shorter than the long answer, is before starting IntenseMuscle.com, I was at another board, which will remain nameless because things didn't go too well there. There was a lot of shady shit going on with the owner and that sort of thing, so I won't get into that. But right before we were leaving, excuse me, I was leaving that board to go start Intense Muscle. I met Dante through the boards, and he was doing DC training. I was doing contest prep, of course, and so we started talking, and I was working with a couple of his off-season clients for contest prep. When we went to IntenseMuscle.com, I thought it would be a good idea to see if he wanted to have his own forum, and that's when we started the Dog Pound forum at IntenseMuscle.com. That was February 2004, so it's been about 10 years. Great team at Intense Muscle. Dante's been there from the start, so it's 10 and a half years pretty much. If he's not there daily, he's there 6.5 days out of 7. So I've known him for quite a while. And of course, I'm a True Nutrition sponsored athlete. I use those supplements. Obviously, Dante Trudell is one of the owners of True Nutrition. Used to be True Protein. So I work with him through True Nutrition as well. Let's see. Do you work your life around your bodybuilding or your bodybuilding around your life? It's a good question. For example, will you not do things such as ride motorcycles or take trips because of packing meals or traveling with food or vice versa? You know, the large majority of the time, because I don't compete or haven't competed since 2012, and then it was 2010 before then. So clearly if I'm competing, you know, that takes priority. So I'll pack my meals, and, you know, everything has to kind of, you know, revolve around getting to the gym, meals, that sort of thing. But I don't miss or not do activities or family things or anything else that we may have scheduled because I have to train. I'm pretty flexible because I work from home. I can change my training times, I can change my cardio times, and I can take food with me. Been to many functions that I have ran out to the car or the truck and hurried up and thrown down a meal and went back in, and no one knew any different. So I've been doing that for years. I've got quite a bit of experience doing that, so that's no big deal. But I would say outside of competing, and if I'm going on a motorcycle ride and I can't get it into my swing arm bag, it's probably not going. I'm not going to miss out on a ride because I have to eat. But it's pretty easy to put away a protein drink and some nuts or something like that, throw them into my little bag, and you know, be good for, you know, 3 hours. If I eat before I leave, have a protein drink while I'm gone, eat when I get back, you know, that's 5 or 6 hours right there. So that's pretty good. Plus I live in Colorado. It's pretty easy to be out and about, whether it's on Saturday night that my wife and I are out with friends, or we're out on a ride. There's a lot of healthy restaurants and options while we're out that I could stop and get something that's decent. If I'm prepping, again, that's different because I'm pretty limited on the foods. Then I would pack them, and I would just make sure that I had the food. Let's see. Skipping over the gear questions. What's your favorite coffee bean or style of coffee? Do you percolate at home or have a machine? I'm kind of a pretentious ass. I have a Keurig. I used to have a press, and I actually prefer that coffee, but I'm lazy and I'm old. So when I get up in the morning, and any of you that are old can relate to this, I go down to this is what I do when I get up. I get up and I immediately come downstairs to the coffee machine, and I put the little cup in, and I put my cup underneath and press the button. While it's brewing, because it doesn't take very long, I get my phone that's in my office. I go back to get my coffee that's just about done. At this point, because I'm old, I smell the coffee. I'm fighting not to shit my pants at this point. Another 30 seconds, coffee's done. I waddle back upstairs with my coffee and my phone, and I assume a position. I take my seat, check my phone, have my coffee. That's how my day starts. What do I prefer? I prefer, I don't know if this is a national, but it's big out here in Colorado. Caribou coffee is great. I'm a hazelnut. I don't put all the foo-foo shit in it. So I'm not a sugar, creamer, milk, that sort of thing. I just need a little bit of a hazelnut taste to my black coffee, and that's usually what I prefer. I get a little cranky if I run out of my hazelnut and I have to go to something else. Next question. What do you think about the brand or popularity of high-frequency training trend? It's late and it's not very bright in here, and I'm old and I can't see very well, so I apologize. What do you think about the trend or popularity of high-frequency training? Example, training body parts 3 to 5 times per week. If I tried to train a body part 3 to 5 times a week, even with low volume, I would probably be dealing with some sort of itis issue by the end of the week with an inflamed bicep tendon or something. That wouldn't work very well. Clearly on something like that where you're doing high frequency, it would have to be low volume. Otherwise, there's just really no way you can recover. I'm not terribly fancy when it comes to things like this. I wouldn't train that frequently. I think I've trained as frequently as maybe hitting each muscle 3 times a week and tried that, and for me it doesn't work very well. I have below average recovery abilities, so training that frequently, even on low volume, it just doesn't work very well for me. Not my thing. I'm a higher volume, lower frequency kind of guy. I always have been. Now, I will say that just because that's me doesn't mean that that's necessarily you. So if you have a situation where you have a body part that isn't responding very well and you've tried different things, look, give it a shot. But I tell you, if you're going to train, as an example, they give an example 3 to 5 times per week. If you're training 5 times a week on the same muscle group, you're not going to last very long before recovery is an issue. Skip. Do you have any plans to post progress pictures during your current off season for the Till I Collapse DVD? Yeah. I probably will I don't have any plans to do that right now. The idea of posting pictures in the off season isn't terribly exciting to me. However, I probably will post gym pictures. I don't know if I will, and I'm certain I'll take progress pictures. Will I post them? I don't know. I'll tell you why. It's basically 2 reasons. Number one, I'm a guy and a bodybuilder just like anybody else, and I'm not terribly hip to posting pictures when I'm not in very good shape. In the off season, because of what I plan on doing for this off season and taking my weight up and that sort of thing, I probably will be a little more sloppy than I would certainly like to be. So I'm not going to be terribly hip to doing that for that reason. But the other reason is just that I'll have them, and it probably would have more of an impact to compare them kind of before and after pictures, or maybe a sequence of pictures throughout. To post them during my off season, not a lot of people see them. I mean, people that follow my journal on Intense Muscle, I guess they would see them, that sort of thing. But you have to understand my position too. As a prep guy, and I'm kind of out there, and I've been around for quite a while, there are other douchey prep guys that would love to get my pictures and post them on their site saying, look, Skip's a fat ass, or something to that effect. So I am kind of cautious of the internet bullshit and try not to put too many pictures out there to entice other people to try to use my pictures against me, I guess. So we'll see, but I doubt I'm going to post them at that time. I probably will post them later and show kind of a comparison or a sequence. Non-fitness related question. Who, past or present, has most greatly influenced your thinking in the person you've become today? Why and how? That's a pretty good question. This is a good example of why I should probably go over these questions more before I actually do the video and film it. Because without giving it any thought, that's a pretty tough question. I am not a terribly religious person. I also don't look to a lot of people in a envy or enviable way, that sort of thing. So that's a difficult question. There are a lot of people that I have respect for, that are successful at what they do, or just plain good people. But and I don't know if my wife usually doesn't watch what I do anyway, but I would say if anybody really has had an impact on me and me trying to be a better person or that sort of thing, it's probably, because of my wife and my family. It's a pretty safe bet that if I didn't have my wife and my kids, I would probably still be making ridiculously stupid decisions that I was making in my early 20s, I don't doubt. Very egocentric, narcissistic type decisions. I was very good with those decisions when they only involved me and how they would impact me. So I don't have the privilege anymore, if it is actually a privilege, of making decisions that only impact me. Any decision I make obviously impacts my kids and my wife, and so I would say that the thought of making a shitty decision and pissing off my wife probably influences me greatly. Next question. What are the signs you look for to tell if you or a client is training with too little volume or not training hard enough? Are there any immediate signs, or can you only tell after a few weeks? Yeah, I mean, the obvious is just that they're not growing, they're not progressing. I use strength, progression, strength to gauge progression in the gym. It's not the only thing, but it is the easiest way to tell if you're progressing in smaller increments, like by the week, by 2 or 3 weeks, by 5 to 6 weeks, things like that. We don't tend to see the muscle that we gain in small time periods like that. You're not going to be able to take a picture and compare it 2 weeks later and say, oh yeah, I'm so much bigger. I've put on, 1.5 pounds of muscle. It's difficult to put on a couple pounds of muscle in just a couple weeks anyway. So short term, gauging your strength is huge to show whether you're progressing and gaining muscle or not. The other thing is, of course, I'm big on, especially when prepping, I will and recommend to a lot of people to use calipers, body fat calipers. You don't even have to do a bunch of different sites. Even if you just do 3 or 4 sites and you do them yourself, over time, week in, week out, you're going to tend to do them in the same place, so that's going to be relatively consistent. And even if they're not dead on accurate with what your body fat percentage actually is, it'll give you a numerical measure that you can watch fluctuate and change over the weeks. So even if you're not very good at it, you might screw up and pinch a little harder one week than the other. But over time, you have to be pretty shitty at doing caliper measurements to not be able to benefit to some degree to see the progression. It's kind of like I would put it up there with a scale, a weight scale that's off by 4 pounds. It doesn't really matter what you weigh as long as you can see the progression over time. So even if you're off 4 pounds or even if you're off 20 pounds, you would still be able to gauge that progression. And it's the same thing with the calipers. You're likely to, even though you might pinch too hard or you might not pinch hard enough, most people will be consistent over the weeks and over the times of taking those measurements. So if you pinch too hard, you're usually going to pinch too hard every single time you do it. So there's a consistency factor there. Now, if you have 12 different people doing your body fat measurements with calipers at a gym, then that's pretty much worthless. Tape measurements are big, and the reason these measures are so big or so important is a lot of people will recomp, and I hate that word, but they'll change their body composition and their weight may not fluctuate much. So there goes the scale weight. And I tell people all the time, that's why it's only one way to gauge progress, because a lot of people have started a prep and finished a prep within 4 or 5 pounds of that starting weight, yet they're shredded versus fat when they started. So the calipers don't lie. You get leaner, the skin gets thinner. The caliper measurements go down. It just is what it is. Tape measurements will show if you're holding size as you get leaner, as your skin thins and the body fat, or the caliper measurements go down for your body fat measurement going down. So you put the scale weight with the tape measure, with the body fat calipers, and you're not going to miss too much with those three things there. This is a good one. How do you tell somebody they're fat? At every competition I've been to, there have always been some competitors who must have had coaches who lied to them. And there's always the guy at the gym who tells you that he's 9% body fat. Seems to me that this is a pretty common thing. How do you go about giving the reality checks to clients and people who ask for advice? That's actually real easy because my name and my reputation is on them. If it's my wife and she comes to me and asks me if she's looking fat in a pair of jeans, it's a pretty good chance I'm gonna lie. But I don't train my wife. And my name is not on my wife. So, and she's not gonna get on stage anytime soon, I don't think. It's just really easy. I've been called an insensitive ass before, but I tend to prefer blunt and honest and to the point. I'm not out to hurt anybody's feelings, but the reality is, if someone is working with me and they can't listen to me tell them, be honest about the condition that they're in, then they ought not to be working with me. The sport of bodybuilding or figure or competing or whatever, you're trying to reach your goals. If you can't handle honesty, it's one of those things where if you don't want to hear the answer, don't ask the question. So if you're working with me, you're dealing with me, you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an honest answer. You may not like it, but you can bet that you're getting an honest answer from me. I'm not bullshitting nobody. Let's see. How the hell do you stay so vascular all the time? I'm not vascular now. Even while gaining. No matter what I do, I never can get vascular. Yeah, I'm not terribly vascular when I'm trying to really put on weight. One vein down your bicep and into your forearm is not vascular. I am vascular when I'm lean, but that's just an individual thing. The leaner you get, the more vascular you'll be. The longer you train, you tend to be more vascular because it's an oxygen nutrient delivery system. It's almost like saying, as a city grows and the population grows, the highway and road system has to grow as well to accommodate all the vehicles being nutrients, that sort of thing. So there are some people though that are just ridiculously vascular and other people aren't. I get that. But that's, some people are shredded, have shredded glutes and feathered outer quads, and some people can get super lean and they just won't. So a lot of that, some of that is a genetic component, even though you will tend to get more vascular the longer you train. And when I say the longer you train, the more years, the more time you put in the gym, and of course the leaner you get. And my old ass been at it for a long time. I probably wasn't terribly vascular if I'm looking back to being a teenager, even 4 or 5 years after I started training. It probably came, it came quite a bit later than that, actually. Your thoughts on this Ebola crap? And this is kind of cool because this is from a firefighter client of mine. Your thoughts on the Ebola crap? Scares the living shit out of me and everyone I work with. We run one sick person daily and we never know what they're sick with. I'm not certain there's a plan for this, that this plan is very reassuring. I've been watching it, keeping an eye on it. My wife asked me about it about a week ago, what I thought about it too. there's what I think about it, then there's the questions about the government and what the government is telling us, if they're holding information back, that sort of thing. I tend to not be much of a conspiracy theorist. I tend to want to think that, yes, the government does some shit that they're not going to tell us about, and maybe that's a good thing. But I think by and large, the people in the United States government aren't smart enough to be able to keep their fucking mouths shut, and keep everybody involved in a secret to keep their mouth shut either. That's why I don't believe that Sandy Hook was a staged incident, because that's too many people that can't keep their fucking mouth shut. Especially with social media these days, somebody would get a hold of it. The only people that ever talk about these things being conspiracies are obscure websites. It's never anything terribly, it's never a source that's terribly legit as far as I'm concerned. Now, I have some friends who are, well-educated and smart people, and that do believe that it's a conspiracy. It makes for good conversation or good debates on Facebook, that sort of thing. But I don't, I can see some of the points that they make, and I can see where in the case of Ebola, the government could be withholding information, not wanting us all to freak out. I get that. The gene certainly could, or the virus could mutate. It could be airborne. I guess that would be a huge problem. Right now, based on the information that we're being provided with, it really doesn't look like it's a terribly, to me, at least at this point, a terribly big deal. I think that because our technology, our knowledge of medicine and that sort of thing, we have great doctors in the United States. I'm not terribly worried. I think we probably have a good handle on it. Sierra Leone, Liberia, they don't have the the doctors that we do here, and again, the technology and that sort of thing. So I think that's the reason that they had such a problem over there. So hopefully I'm right. Clearly I'm still watching, keep an eye on it. With kids and stuff, you worry about that sort of thing. The guy asking the question here, clearly I understand his concern, because as a firefighter, if I was a firefighter and I had to go out on a run, someone was coughing up a lung, I'd have to wonder what the hell they had too, and I would really not want to get this. So when I say I'm not terribly concerned, clearly I'm sure it's going to kill some people, but I don't see it being of epidemic proportions. And like I said, I hope I'm right. I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on my Q&A. Well, now that I got rid of all the gear questions, that's all I got this week. Short and sweet. Projectbodybuilding.com. Gotta get a plug in here for Between Two Dumbbells too. If you haven't seen the first show, you don't see it, I guess you hear it. Podcast, Between Two Dumbbells, myself and Heather Armbrust. The first show went live 3 days ago. Check it out on Projectbodybuilding.com. It's about an hour and a half, about 3 segments. We think it's pretty good, but if you think it sucks, let us know. If you think it's great, tell your friends. We'll be doing that show every 2 weeks, so we have another one coming out again in a couple weeks. Get your questions in if you have gear questions, questions about thermos, Clen, T3. I'd probably even I'd answer some questions on insulin, my thoughts on that sort of thing. And I will answer questions, but I'm not going to, just so I'm being clear, I'm not going to answer a question that says something like, lay out an insulin and growth hormone protocol for a 27-year-old who's been training for 7. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing your setting up a plan for somebody, but I'll answer all the questions, and I'll answer them in as much detail as I possibly can. So look for that thread on Projectbodybuilding.com. Me on Intense Muscle. Check me out on Twitter @IntenseMuscle, Instagram @IntenseMuscle, Facebook Team Skip page. I'm all over the place. I'm out.